It's a good song, isn't it?
Yes.
I know she did good, but the words were great. We forget that sometimes, don't we? We've been made clean and what it's all about. As for your prayers, I'll be speaking Thursday through Sunday morning down at Snow Camp Victory Chapel Church with their revival. And it starts Thursday night, so anybody happens to be in Snow Camp through the weekend down there shopping at one of the malls or something, come by. Keep us in your prayers. We're talking about fishing, evangelism, that dreaded subject. And last week we shared with you about where the fish are, so to speak, what the fish, according to Barna Research, says that they're looking for. I gave you some scriptures, and I want to go over quickly again this morning from Matthew chapter 4, verse 19 and 20, that Jesus said, "Come, follow me, and I will send you out to fish for people." In Matthew chapter 9, that the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. So pray for laborers to go forth into the fields. Matthew 28, the great command, the great commission to go into all the world and make disciples, baptizing them, and teach them to obey all that I have commanded. Let me just quickly go over a recap from last week about knowing the fish so that we understand, for those of us who think that nobody wants to know, nobody's interested in spiritual things anymore, then you're just wrong. According to Barna Research, which was pretty extensive research, they found that 30% of the people in America right now, 30% of all the people. Oh yeah, wait just a minute. There's a different way to tell me that. Instead of giving somebody a heart attack. The trumpet done sounded. But 3 out of every 10 says that they're on a spiritual quest for truth. Right now, 3 out of every 10 non-church, non-saved people that you know say they're on a spiritual quest for truth. 46% says they have unanswered questions, spiritual questions that they'd like to have answered. 44% they're curious about who God is. 43% are seeking something better for their life. And 40% say they feel empty. The harvest field is truly plenty. So don't think that nobody is interested. At least half the people, or close to half of the people we know, are looking for something better in their life. As we talked about last week, don't forget, it's all about the golden rule. Do it unto others as you have them do unto you. But today we're going to talk about how to catch the fish. With that said, now,
Hey, you gonna watch the game on Sunday?
Yeah, I want to, but I can't. I have this thing I have to go to.
What thing?
Well, it's like, it's kind of like church.
Holy water. The food looked unblessed. I'm sorry. I just need to go.
You gonna watch the game on Sunday?
No. I have mass. So I'm not gonna miss mass for a game. I'm Catholic. This is way more important.
Hey, you gonna watch the game on Sunday?
No, I'm going to record it. I have church at 6 o'clock.
Where do you go to church?
St. Timothy's, where do you go?
Well, I haven't really been in a while.
You should come sometime. I think you're really going to like it. Are you going to play?
No.
Well, is everything okay?
I'm just really worried because my mom's getting tested for cancer tomorrow.
Oh.
want to get on that. If something happens to her, you don't want her to die. Stay serious, sick.
My mom's getting tested for cancer tomorrow.
I'm so sorry to hear about that. I'll definitely pray for her.
Thank you.
Hey, can we listen to some music?
Yeah, pick whatever you want.
Dirty song, explicit lyrics. I bet you that your mama don't want you to hear.
I love that song.
And then you play on the scene.
Yeah, it's real gangsta.
My jam.
All that you boy.
Hey, do you mind if we listen to some music?
What did you have in mind?
Who's gonna turn on the radio?
No, let's not ingest world with poisons. How about we sing? I've been learning some Gregorian chant.
Gregory who? Hey, can we listen to some music?
Sure. Have you ever heard of Icondola?
No,
He's so great. You gotta listen to it.
awesome.
Something happens, you don't want her to die. Stay in here. Serious. Serious. Serious.
So there's a right way and a wrong way, right? Yeah. So take your Bible and go with me to 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15. I think this is the first step that we need to learn is how to share our faith with other people, how to seize the opportunities. If somebody asks you a question, how to do that. And this has three very important things for us here in this one passage of Scripture. So it says, in your hearts, revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for your hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect. So the first call is to be an authentic Christian, to revere Christ. To be the real deal, that somebody wants to ask you about your life because they see something different in you. Secondly, be ready to answer the person who asked you, hey, what do you have? What makes you a little different? What's going on in your life? To be able to give them that answer. But the key there was what? Do it with gentleness and with respect. Doesn't that sound like the golden rule? Just doing the exact same thing that you'd want to do to you. So let me give you, according to the Barna research, the information that when he surveyed thousands of people who said they were not Christians, they were unsaved, they were unchurched, that this is what they said, that first of all, they wanted to see in us the person who would actually share with them. Number one answer was 62% said they want someone to listen to them without casting judgment on them. In other words, do you need to tell them they're going to hell? Do you need to tell them how sorry of a sinner they are? They want you to share with them without casting judgment upon them. The second answer, 55%, is don't force me to make a conclusion. Don't tell me I've got to tell you yes or no right now. If I say I need to think about it, then what do we need to let them do? Think about it. So do not force a conclusion. The third answer is to share your own story. And we'll talk about that here a little shortly. 33% share your own story about Christ in your own life. And 15% said they're looking for a person who has vibrant faith. But only 15%. And the bottom answer, there was about 12 answers given. The bottom answer have all the answers. Yep. So you and I are always afraid. Somebody's going to ask us something that we don't know. They're not looking for that. That's the bottom thing that they're looking for. Somebody who has all the answers. Never anything wrong in saying, I'm not sure. Let me get back to you on that one. So how do they want to be approached? And here you're going to see again the golden rule played out. How does somebody want to be approached in 2019? Number one answer, a one-on-one conversation. In fact, a casual one-on-one conversation. How many of you in here have casual conversations? It's just two people talking, right? It's not one person with an agenda, one person who's now the person that's being passed upon. Two people having a conversation, one-on-one. It's the number one thing. It's the exact same thing that you and I would want, is someone to address us in a one-on-one situation. The second top answer is a group, a small group. Again, a casual group conversation in a small group, where 3 or 4 people can get together, 4 or 5 people can get together, but where it's an honest conversation, where something can be said without somebody jumping down your throat, without somebody getting in your face, without someone condemning you, that you can have this conversation within a group and find some of these answers. Then you have the third answer, actually a video or movie. I was kind of surprised by that one. So a video or a movie, a good Christian evangelistic type of video movie. Maybe you've seen something and you would say, you know, hey, this would be a good thing. Jill and I watched a movie Friday night, Heaven Bound. Kind of an old movie, a Christian film, but it was a good movie that anyone could have enjoyed. So that still works. Something they could watch in the privacy of their own home in a movie format. 70% is a person at church. Now, you'll notice the word "at" is capitalized for a reason. Not a person from church, a person at church. In other words, if a person comes to visit the church, would they be surprised if someone at church tries to have a spiritual conversation with them? That would be part of your expectations. I'm at church, so I should expect someone from the church to come up and speak to me and maybe get into a spiritual conversation. What I don't want is to get home Monday afternoon or Sunday afternoon and somebody comes knocking on my door from the church that I have no relationship with whatsoever. So, the people are at church. And the bottom answer of all, as you would expect, because the same thing is true of all of us, is a person who is a stranger to us. That doesn't matter if that's a street evangelist, if it's door-to-door contacts that we're trying to make, anyone that we do not have a relationship with us. Because how many of you realize, there's certain things that we're told that we shouldn't talk with people about, particularly people that we don't really know. What are they? Politics and religion. It's a very personal thing, isn't it? To have a spiritual conversation is something people take very personally, where they're at spiritually. When you're asking someone about dying, that's a very personal thing to be talking to them about. And so, obviously, within a relationship, you can handle that and you can welcome that somebody really cares about you, they love about you, but just a stranger that you don't know, after 1 minute knocking on your door or grabbing you by the arm is asking you if you're to die tonight, would you go to heaven? You probably wonder if he's getting ready to kill you. So you don't know what's taking place. It's all about the relationship, and that's why you and I have to become more intentional with that. So let me give you 5 simple steps this morning to a strategy to getting a little bit more involved in sharing our faith with other people. And number 1 is the key to it all, the art of listening. How many of you would say that you're a good listener? Now, the test would be that you and I could have a conversation, and I'm talking to you, and then I could turn around and say, now what did I just say to you? And if you could not tell me what I just said to you, you're not a listener. So when we think that we may be good listeners, we're really not great listeners. Because most of us, when we hear somebody say something, we're thinking about what I'm going to say back to them. A story I'm going to tell them. Or maybe we're thinking about other things, even as we're listening to a person. But then, within the confines of the relationship, there's a lot of things that are said. And if you're not carefully listening to people, you can miss over an open invitation they've just given you to share into their life. Just like that video clip that was talking about, hey, my mother's going to be tested for cancer tomorrow. That's a listening skill. if that was said in general conversation, it's an open invitation now to respond to what they just said. You know, so just listening in our normal conversations, that people may be talking about marital problems. They may be talking about being miserable in their life and feeling empty in their life, and they just can't seem to get it together. They're giving us all of these words that gives us an invitation to respond back. But we just don't have that art of listening. Someone like Bob makes his living not by talking and telling people what to do, but by listening. And then responding back to those key things that he has heard them say. Get involved in listening within our normal conversations. Let's become better listeners. Number 2, share within our relationships. If you have a relationship with someone, then you pretty much have permission to share personal stuff with them. So to be able to try to gauge where they're at spiritually, a person wouldn't take that wrong if you had some type of relationship with them. And so we need to learn about asking questions about people's faith within the relationships that we have, that we can gauge their spiritual temperature. We may even need to be very listening to the Spirit's prompting that may tell us, hey, ask them the question. I've told you this story before, I'm sure, but when I first went to pastor in Siler City, well, second time I went to pastor in Siler City, I was visiting a man who was a shut-in in our church. I'd never met him. I'd only been there a short while, and I went to visit him. I knew that he'd had a 40-year perfect attendance pin. Y'all remember when they used to give out little Sunday school pins and stuff for attendance? And I knew that he had gotten a 40-year perfect Sunday school attendance pin. Well, I'm sitting on the porch talking to him. I just keep feeling impressed to ask him that question. If you were to die tonight, do you know that you'd go to heaven? And I'm sitting here, I'm 31 years old, he's 81 years old. And first time that I really have met him, and we're sitting on this porch just talking, and I'm just sitting here telling the Spirit, I'm not going to ask this man, he's got a 40-year perfect attendance pin for Sunday school. But the prompting wouldn't stop. And so finally I just said, hey, Mr. Harvey, I've got to ask you this question. I don't want to offend you, but I've got to ask you this question. If you were to die tonight, are you sure you'd go to heaven? And he started crying. No, I'm not. Let me tell you something. A man had attended Sunday school for 40 years and never had a Sunday school teacher told him how to give his life to Jesus Christ in 40 years. Now, Sunday school teachers, that's pathetic. Now, he was in that time frame. You remember a lot of people used to go to Sunday school and then leave, not stay for worship. 40 years, perfect attendance for Sunday school, and had never been told how to give his life to Jesus Christ. And that day we prayed on this porch. 3 months later, I buried him. Did a service. So learn within those relationships to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions, particularly if you have a closer relationship with those people. Now, obviously, as a preacher, you can get away with asking a few more questions because people expect that. Number 3, sharing your own testimony. Your testimony is the best tool that you have in your tool bag. It's surprising what you don't need to know. Because people already said they're not looking for somebody who can answer all the questions. They're looking for people who's got the real deal. They're looking for people who's got what they're looking for. And sharing your personal testimony, first of all, is telling them something personal about your life. Hey, have I ever told you how I became a Christian? Have I ever told you why I became a Christian? No, you never shared that with me. Let me just share with you. That's what I loved about Evangelism Explosion program when it was around. The reason I liked it best is it always shared something personal first. You would always share your personal testimony with a person before you asked them a personal question about their salvation. Your story. How many of you in here have a testimony? Right? Could you tell me that in a minute and a half? Could you tell me why you became a Christian? Could you tell me what your life was before you met Jesus? And tell me why you came to Jesus, and then tell me, most of all, well, what's so neat about being a Christian now? And do that in a minute and a half. You should. You should be able to share your testimony with a person standing in a grocery store line. You know, people want to hear your story, but they don't want to see a documentary, right? They want a clip of a couple of minutes. And so, share your testimony. It's the best thing you've got. See, people can argue with what you believe, right? But people can't argue with your experience. Somebody can't look at you and say, Jesus didn't change your life, when you just sat there and told them Jesus changed your life. They can't argue with that. They may have questions to try to understand it, but they can't argue with experience. But they can argue with facts. Number 4, help others with non-spiritual needs. Nobody wants to be just a guinea pig. No one wants to be a project. I don't want somebody coming to see me and trying to share with me about my faith when I haven't seen them any other time. You see what I'm saying? We don't like being used. We don't want to feel like we're being used. We don't want to feel like we're just being a notch in somebody's belt. See, we've done all of those things in the church world, and we did it wrong, and somehow a lot of people, it's not in church. For example, how many of you remember when we would fill the pew Sundays and the friend Sundays and all those things that sounded so good, but people who were never being asked by you and all that time to come to church was being asked to come during this time of contest. Only to come to church and find out that the one who won the contest was going to get a free weekend at the beach. And what did they feel all of a sudden? Used. You just used me. You didn't care about me. You didn't care about my spiritual heart, my spiritual soul. You cared about winning the trip to the beach. And so we saw people come and fill the pews and see them no more. So be careful, particularly with non-spiritual needs. World Relief was one of my favorite missions years ago because it had the slogan, empty bellies have no ears. In other words, if you're talking to a person who's hungry, do you need to feed them before you tell them about Jesus? That's a non-spiritual need that needs to be met. So we need to look at ways that we can serve people, that we can help people in a non-spiritual way that help earn us the right to share with them this personal thing of the spirituality. And number 5, yes, invite people to church. Invite them to a church event. Invite. The number 1 weakness of First Wesleyan Church is you do not invite people to church. Now, I've got some theories as to why, which may or may not be right. I think sometimes we're afraid to invite people to church because we feel we probably won't be here when they come. And so we don't want to be embarrassed that way. But 85% of Christian people have never invited another person to come to church. What's the easiest thing that you can invite them to come to? Church. How many of you have invited somebody to go out to eat? You've invited them to go to a movie, to a ball game. Come to my kids' game. You invite them to a birthday party. You invite them to a wedding shower. So it's not like we're afraid of inviting people, right? There's something about church. And again, it comes back to a value thing. If this is something I really value, then I think other people would benefit from it as well. Listen, if church does not benefit you in any way, shape, or form, obviously you shouldn't invite other people to come, right? But if church is a great value to you, it is a great benefit to you, then why wouldn't other people benefit in the same? So, invite them. And listen, don't just invite other people from other churches to come. We're not about trading sheep. We should be about reaching lost people. So there's 5 simple steps. Now let me close with a couple of comments. Number 1, with this one. When you think about evangelism, I think you and I have more hang-ups about it than the non-church people have. I think we, as the Christians, have more hang-ups on the topic of evangelism than the non-Christian does. Especially those we have a relationship with. See, I expect my friends to share with me whatever's in their life. I expect to get a phone call or a text that says, hey, you got to go try this place. Man, I just ate somewhere tonight. You got to check it out. You expect that within friendships, right? I expect a friend to share with me anything that they feel has value to them in their life. How many of you been to the Amway trip? Where somebody wants to draw those numbers in front of you. Whatever people believe in, that's what they're trying to get other people into. I think it's us, as Christians, that somehow we have convinced ourselves nobody wants to know. Somehow we're going to get slapped in the face. We're going to get cussed out. This, blah, 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 is going to happen. And there's nothing in the research that says anything about it. Especially within a relationship. Now, if we want to go knocking on doors this evening, we should expect something different. We should expect to get some doors slammed in our face. We should expect some people just to not answer the door. We may, feel the need somebody telling us just get off the porch. But within a relationship, no, none of those things would ever be experienced. A person may tell you, look, right now I'm just not interested, okay? And if they tell you that, what do? You back off. When I first started pastoring, I would get mad when I preached or taught something and nobody responded. And the reason I would get mad is I'd get mad at myself. And I would go home just convinced, and I think part of that was spiritual warfare, convinced that I just didn't explain it right. I didn't do a good job laying this out. But finally, the Holy Spirit helped me to understand my job is just to preach. My job is to share. What you do with it is your choice. And if you respond or don't respond, that's your choice. And it changed everything. And so I'm saying that to say this, but the same thing with sharing your faith. If I try to share my faith with another person and they're not interested, then okay. Hey, if you change your mind, let me know. I'd love to share with you some of these things. Leave that door open, but back off. But if you lay it all out there for you and you explain it all, and would you like to receive Christ today? Well, I'm going to have to think about that one. No, not right now. Then just back off. Because it's all about every person making their own individual choice, right? What they want to do with their life is their choice. We just need to help them understand what they're missing and what the Bible says about eternity. A couple of my favorite sayings. Evangelism is just one beggar telling another beggar where to find a piece of bread. Martin Luther said it's the duty of every Christian to be Christ to his neighbor. How many of you would believe that? It's the duty of every Christian to simply be Christ to his neighbor. Don't forget, 95% of us said that part of our faith means being a witness for Christ. And 96% of us said in the survey that there's nothing better that can happen in a person's life than them coming to know Jesus Christ. So how many of us here at First Wesleyan believe that today? Nothing better than coming to know Christ. So how can we sit on our hands and not share our faith? The world is still full. In fact, there's more people on the face of this earth than there's ever been in history. It's over 7 billion people now. Out of that 7 billion, about 2.5 billion are professing Christians, which means 4.5 billion are not. But according to the research, 3 out of every 10 of those are on a spiritual quest for truth. The harvest, as Jesus said, is still very much plentiful, but the laborers are